Are live. Harrison Moore. It's so good to see you, dude. Are you back in the UK? Where are you at these days?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm in London. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, my wife and I were lucky enough to travel full time for 4 years, and we thought we were going to live abroad. But recently, we decided, after lots of conversation, that actually the UK is the best place for us as we try and start a family and move into the next stages of our career. So we're back here now, intended to stay permanently. And I have to say, being away from England for so long has actually made me appreciate England even more. So
Yeah,
that's a surprise. That's a surprise for sure. Yeah.
yeah. It's funny. I was um listening to a podcast the other day, and someone was talking about how they had lived abroad for 4 years in Europe, and you don't realize how American you are until you're abroad for a considerable amount of time.
Mm.
And um, he, him and his family are planning to move back for kind of similar reasons. And I think it's lovely to travel the world and experience different perspectives. And I know how hard it is to have to shed like certain parts of yourself in a way, because the cultures are different. And for me, if I lived in Europe, I wouldn't be able to watch American sports because of the time zone differences, and that would be pretty brutal. And I would miss that. So
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I totally hear you. Um, well, I appreciate your time. I wanted to connect because I had been working on this essay currently titled "Each Author a Contributor, Every Essay a Pull Request," and the idea was, what if the Atlantic were an open source project and the editorial process were public? And I reached out to you because of your background working with so many writers over the years and doing a lot of editing. And just want to give you a moment to kind of talk about your background, what you're writing about here on Substack, and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, I'll try and keep this concise. This is an ongoing challenge of mine. Um, Originally from the north of England, did construction as an electrician first for a decade. Hated it really. My life started when I went to art school. Totally changed my life. It's where I met my wife. It's where I built confidence. It's where I started getting ideas. It's where I started getting a sense of what was possible in the world beyond just my corner of England and the construction industry. Um, Cutting a very long story short, because I did a BA and an MA in art, but I ended up founding a tech startup after art school, which went well, and then it didn't go well. The pandemic happened. Me and my wife decided to deprioritize our careers for a little bit and put travel at the top of our list of priorities. So we did that. Then I found Rite of Passage and was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be putting my career on the back burner, but this organization is sick. Absolutely incredible community. So I joined Rite of Passage as a student, actually, because I was on Substack and I was writing as I was traveling. Loved it so much that I just pestered them until they made me an editor, and then pestered them even more until they hired me into the team, and I was kind of running their discovery calls, their sales calls, and I suppose just acting like a resident coach and mentor to many of the professionals that were taking the course. I was really devastated when David closed down the company, but I completely understand why he did. He'd done it for a long time and he'd had great success. So after that, uh, just just to land this plane, past couple of years, Rite of Passage put me in sort of the role of coach quite naturally. So I naturally leaned into that and developed a coaching practice around positive psychology, which is just one of my nerdy interests. And then even more recently, some of my coaching clients noticed just in conversation with me and seeing some of my writing that I'm actually quite savvy with AI and I enjoy building with it. So at the moment, I'm currently splitting my time between doing a bit of writing mentorship, a bit of career coaching, and now a bit of AI consulting. So that's me in a nutshell. Um, and writing is, I'm a massive, massive nonfiction writing nerd. I mean,
Mm,
I can't even describe it to you, man. Like the thing that's the thread that I've had throughout my career has been craftsmanship. So
yeah,
whatever work I've done, whether it's been on construction sites installing electrical installations, or whether it was at art school building sculptures, or whether it was writing on Substack, the thing that I find myself getting obsessed with is how to bring a level of care to it that goes above and beyond just enjoying yourself or trying to create something. I really want to do something well for its own sake, and like writing to me is a brilliant craft for that, because it's something
Yeah.
it's something every person has done, right, to some degree, whether it's just writing
Yeah.
email, going through school.
Every day,
And
everyone is on their phone writing something, whether it's on TikTok or Twitter or Substack or an email, like you said, right?
exactly. So it has this incredible universal on ramp, but it's also something that has a a really incredibly steep learning curve, and it's mysterious, and there's an art and a science to it. I don't believe you can just teach people how to write. I think there's so much about it we don't really understand fully, but we can just try to.
Mm.
So anything. So I'll close by saying that's me. Anything. If people want to talk about the craft of writing well, whether it's essays or poems or whatever, I'm your guy. I tend to go super deep into it and get a bit too nerdy at times. But uh, this project with you was a perfect little thing to do. So I couldn't
I
say
was gonna
no to
say
it.
this is exactly why I called you and was like, "Hey, man, I have this idea. It could be crazy. Don't know if it'll work or if it will resonate, but it's an experiment that I would love to try."
Yeah,
And so I'm just
yeah.
gonna share my screen real quick and kind of just quickly show what I'm kind of talking about here. So um, basically, I have a pull request open in GitHub, and this project under the Indie Thinkers organization called Human Language Model. This is all open source; like anyone can access this link, and I'll share this in the notes once we post this later. But um, the idea is that the process of writing and getting feedback from friends or from a large language model these days, right? That whole cycle is private for the most part. Like most people don't talk about their rough draft and how it became a polished essay that people consume and enjoy and share. And I
Mm.
thought, well, what uh, or how can people benefit from seeing that process out in the open? So if a writer were to share an essay with the world that is nowhere near complete and work with an editor, work with friends to improve it, to get feedback, to iterate, and everyone could see that process end to end, and that artifact live forever. That um, kind of process of going from A to B uh, is documented and available for public consumption, and people can learn why certain decisions were made, why certain lines were cut, why certain ideas were dropped, why the title changed 10 times, right? Like there's so many things I feel like people can learn. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of try that out and see how this could work and if people would benefit from it.
Yeah. Can I just say a few quick words about it, about the
Yeah.
project itself?
Hmm.
Um, I genuinely think it's a really interesting idea. This,
Hmm.
you're essentially bringing uh, you're essentially bringing the sort of like qualities of open source collaboration, and tech and technical organization, right? Like there's something very thorough and rigorous about the way that software engineers work, open source, and share information and keep things recorded. So you bring in all of those qualities to the mysterious process of like how people end up with something that is compelling for a reader when it began as just an idea in their head, right? And so that's
Yeah.
the first thing. That's the first thing I like about it. Um, I also and actually I think what's interesting about this as well is that it's I think it's got the potential to be a bit controversial, in the best of ways, which I think can only be a good thing for your sort of marketing and getting it, getting the word out there. But controversial because I think for a lot of people, for better or for worse, they may think of their creative process as being something quite private, and you know, at the extreme end of that spectrum, people might even think about it as their intellectual property, maybe, right?
Mm.
But you also have a lot of people, like and I'm thinking of people like Austin Kleon, Mason Curray, big champions of like pulling back the curtain and helping us all understand what goes on in that mysterious mind of the artist, who think that actually sharing your work is at least like an interesting thing, at most a moral imperative, actually, right? Like some people think
Mhm.
we owe it to ourselves to share that. So this is I see this as a genuinely novel technical solution that fits in with that long line of artists and fans of art that have been trying to help us pull back the curtain and sort of help people understand that creativity is learnable and it's accessible, and there are parts of it that are mysterious, but on the whole, it's something that we can all do.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are patterns, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, but there are patterns that emerge if you look at successful writing. If you look at a lot of successful writing, you'll see patterns in how it was produced. So
Mm,
this
yes,
is great. This is really great. I think.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think, like you said, it, it if something like this got a lot of attention and grew in popularity, it would be interesting to see how it would impact writers who, like you said, want to be very private, and
Mm,
would there be pressure put on prominent writers that we know very well to talk more about their process, right?
mhm.
And to open up more. Um,
Yeah.
one thing I want to check real quick is just to make sure this is being recorded. I believe so. Okay, cool. I remember the last time I did a live uh, with some folks. It was amazing and it was not recorded. And that was heartbroken.
No.
So, yeah.
Worse.
So I know I think we're good. I don't see any signal that it's not.
I mean,
Um,
I
okay,
can't
cool.
see anything that says it's been
Yeah,
recorded. I can see the live symbol, but
I
uh,
know. Yeah, yeah. So we'll just,
shit.
you know,
Fingers
hope for the
crossed.
best. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let me share my screen and then we could dive in. And we can start wherever you want, Harris.
Yeah. Yeah. So to tee this up, it's interesting because you know, you, Daniel, get asked me to just um, spend about an hour giving feedback in a way that I would typically do for a student at Rite of Passage, right? Or how I'd expect my work to be looked at as well.
Yeah,
Obviously, the added interest here is that that I'm giving feedback through GitHub, and that's your whole thing, isn't it? You're saying if we maybe I'm preaching to the choir and saying things that are unnecessary for your readers, but for anyone out there that doesn't really know what this is, like, it's cool because it's like you're hosting your draft on GitHub, and then any comments that I make, editorial comments, are there for everybody to see. And
yeah,
presumably, if we went through this process several times to the point where you were happy to publish it, there'd be like a very legible and accurate history of like everything that we talked about, everything
exactly.
that.
And let me just
So
quickly I'm just gonna scroll just for people to see. So,
yeah,
I opened this pull request about a month ago, and then you kind of came in and just went through the markdown document and added a ton of comments. And I kind of came back and added some responses here as well. But this was kind of the start of it. You can see just like the sheer like volume of kind of discourse here, which was fantastic
mm,
and super helpful. And so this is kind of how it started. Um,
yeah, and I think it's worth saying for people that are non-technical that all the comments that I've put in GitHub here would usually exist in the margins in like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, right? That we're
correct.
just using it. And I did ask you, are you sure that this isn't going to be too great a leap in terms of user interface for people that aren't used to using GitHub? But you pointed out that not most of your readers, but many of the people that you're most trying to reach with this idea are technical, actually.
Yeah,
Um, Hang on a
correct. Yeah.
second. I've got Whisper Flow popping up and trying to do things. Let me just close it.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
Um,
The bots are interrupting. That's a very
it's like
2026 problem.
yeah, honestly, like I'm so done. I'm so done with like pop up boxes and
Yeah.
oh god, nudges. Um, so like just to give context to people that have not had editorial work done from me, or maybe people that didn't go to write a passage, because I picked up a lot of my techniques from just modeling how writers were doing it and how editors were doing it at Rite of Passage. What we tend to do is like we share a draft, we read it, and some editors like to read the whole thing first without making any notes and get that like initial emotional impression. Others like to just jump straight in and make notes in the margins. Others like to go through a draft with different lenses, so they might go through the draft first and say, "Is anything boring?" and highlight that. Then they might go through again and say, "Is anything unconvincing?" and so on and so forth. It really depends on the editor. For me, with this piece, I gave myself an hour thereabouts, and I did give it one read first, just to make sure that I understood it at a high level, and just to take stock of like my first impressions of it. And then I read it again and went through it with an editorial eye. I didn't look at it through, one by one lenses. That's a bit granular for this, but I
Yeah.
could have done. I had more time. But and then this is something that I think is a bit more personal to my style of editing. I not only do I tend to leave comments in the margins, I also tend to usually I record a Loom video and attach that to the document so that when the writer's looking at the feedback, they can. The Loom video is really more about like the more strategic, conceptual questions I've got or ideas that we're discussing that it'd be difficult to put into the margins actually because it's just too wordy.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas stuff in the margins tends to be more tactical stuff like grammar, style, things like that. So all you're looking at here on the page are my sort of tactical margin oriented is my tactical margin feedback. What I haven't shared with you yet is my strategic notes, what I would have put in a Loom video, which I
Yes.
suppose is what I'm doing here. Um,
Exactly. And so you actually inspired the idea a little bit here, Harrison, because of our past experience. And so I remember that Loom video kind of artifact and thought, well, we could do a live session, record it, and then that transcript could be then attached to uh, this pull request as additional context for
mm.
other people to benefit from. And the video itself would live on the Substack publication, and people could watch that and learn from it. And that could potentially help their writing process.
So once this is live and people can start using it in the public realm, are you intending for editors to leave Loom videos attached if they want to? Because that's what I would want to do personally.
Correct. Yes. So I think a Loom video or a live session that's recorded, I would be okay with either. And I think both could be effective. I think the benefit of something that is live is if the community grew and if this idea became something really meaningful, a lot of people could benefit from being able to ask questions
Mm.
in a live session. And that could be an added benefit that you wouldn't get from a Loom video. Um, but that would be the only reason to do that. But it wouldn't be something that I would push editors to do if they felt more comfortable just recording a Loom and attaching it. That would be totally fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, do people watching, are they aware of like what this essay is about fundamentally and why you were writing it? Or do we need to just touch on that briefly?
Yeah, so I can kind of touch on that a little bit. I didn't want to. I'm a rambler, Harrison, so I didn't want to spend
Mm.
too much time talking about it because I think that the title and the question of what if the Atlantic was an open source project does kind of capture a lot for folks.
How
But
about
sorry,
how
good.
about then how about then in just in service of avoiding um you falling into the trap of maybe rambling and in service of because this is like real. This is again, if I try and summarize for the viewers what I think this piece is about and why you wrote it, and it doesn't marry up with your own intentions, then that's good feedback for you, right? Because like,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
does that should we
So
do that? Yeah.
yeah. So the goal of this essay was to introduce the vision for indie thinkers as an open source project and to essentially inspire other writers and editors to want to participate in this experiment.
Mm,
And I use the word experiment because I am not naive to think that this is a good idea or like this could actually work or people will care. And so I think it disarms me a bit, and it humbles
mm,
me to say like, hey, this is an experiment. I'm not sure. Like,
mm,
and so the goal is to get more people to participate because the only way to really properly run this experiment, in my opinion, is for a lot of people to contribute to it, to try it out for themselves, to try out this process
yeah.
of submitting an essay that's not done, getting the feedback, having an editor review, iterating, and publishing. If if we don't have several people going through that loop, then I don't think the hypothesis has been truly tested.
Yeah.
And I can't say whether or not it's a bad idea,
Mm, mm,
because if people don't participate, it could just be I'm not communicating the idea well enough. It might not be that the idea is bad. uh,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it could just be a communication problem, and not, oh, I don't want to do this. Um, and so the goal of this essay is to address that communication gap and make sure that I'm really capturing the vision and creating a call to action uh, for
Mm-hmm.
writers and editors.
It's great. I mean, I'm going to just step into full editorial mode now. So
Yeah.
pretend we're not on Substack Live. Pretend that you've hired me to give feedback on this particular piece and help me develop it. So
Cool.
um, I want to start by just saying that I think it's great that you have that you had an objective for this piece up front, because I think one of the big traps that early stage writers, including myself, fall into is thinking that is kind of thinking that that they can write something good without knowing why they're doing it. Now,
Mm,
this is gonna wind some people up. There's gonna be some people out there that think, "Fuck you, Harrison. That's not true. I get up in the morning and I do morning pages, and it's so wholesome, and I get some great ideas in my morning pages. I frequently jump on calls with my friends, and we just shoot the shit, and we get really into it, and the ideas we develop are incredible. And you could writing can be a way of learning, and you can start writing about something, and by the time you've finished a session, you've realized that you don't understand that thing anymore. All of these things are true, right? All of those things are true. Writing can be the most incredible um, exploratory process. Um, you We all know, don't we, by having done it a little bit, that you do end up learning new things about things you thought you knew about, right? In the
mm,
writing. So all of these things are true. The problem is that that type of writing, that kind of internal facing, self absorbed rumination and sort of self exploration, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be useful or interesting to someone else, right? And so the question is always, if you're going to put your work out into the public domain and you want to seriously be read and taken seriously, you've got to find a way to make it not just palatable, but nowadays, increasingly, as we know, compelling. Otherwise, people are just going to bounce. So, and I say all this because I think a lot of people, and I look, I'm not pointing fingers. I fall into this trap often, um, but I think a lot of writers sit down to write an essay without really knowing why, And I
mm.
think it sounds really simple, but I think getting clear on that at the outset is super, super important, because it means that everything else that comes after that is going to be not just easier to make decisions about, but it's going to actually feel more enjoyable and more smooth as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we'll come back to this. I think this idea of like knowing what your objective is up front, versus open-ended exploration, because I think it's a tension that sits at the heart of all nonfiction writing. Maybe even
Mm,
fiction too, but I can't speak to that because I've never tried writing fiction.
okay.
So, um, so I've got some feedback, right? So like, um, yeah, just before I jump into it, final thing to say on what I was just saying. I think there are a lot of writing methodologies and like heuristics and just things that help people write, that have helped people write in the past and can be really generative. And a lot in that, and rite of passage. Admittedly, I wasn't part of the team that designed the curriculum, certainly not in the beginning. Um, and I wasn't a decision maker in this process, but I do know that like writing schools, like the rite of passage and others, they take cues and build on the wisdom of other people. And I know that
Mm,
one of the methodologies that was influential at writing schools like the Rite of Passage was this idea that comes from I believe her name is Ellen Fishburne. You can go and
mm.
Google her.
Yes, I know Ellen. She's incredible.
Okay, yeah. So I've never met Ellen, by the way, as well, and I'd love to meet her and chat to her because she feels like a kindred spirit in the sort of writing craft
Yes.
area. But she's got Ellen and her colleagues, having worked with literally hundreds of great writers, um, spotted a pattern, back to this thing about patterns that seemed to be consistent across different writers, different projects, different times. And we can get into that if you want. I mean, it's their intellectual property, and I want to be a bit careful about that. But I raise it just to say that um, it's the writing pattern that I've adopted in my
Mm,
nonfiction practice, and I find it really um, I want to say comforting actually, because
mm. Okay.
before I had a pattern, I was I was constantly snared by the tyranny of choice and freedom and abundance.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And
Constraints
like
are, we talked about constraints a lot in the past, you know.
I'm a huge constraints nerd, man. I'm only just getting into that, and I don't have much published on my newsletter about constraints, unfortunately, yet. But it's more content will come just about constraints, 'cause I think it's one of the most underappreciated and under
Yep.
talked about tools in a creative person's toolkit. So I mentioned constraints because, yeah, the compose pattern that Ellen Fishburne and her colleagues spotted um, acts as a fantastic constraint for me personally, and I know it can help lots of other writers as well. And it begins with, from compose. Can we put this in the chat for people or not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't even know if you can, but
The
let's have a look. So compose, it's those it's an acronym, and those letters mean concept, objective, material, plan, organization, style, and then what's the last one? Oh, it's like putting the final finishing touches on it. It's
mm,
gonna eat away at me. That I think the E stands for elegance. There you go.
elegance.
In fact, let me just copy something over here.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Okay, so uh, no, that didn't work. Apologies. One second.
And
Yeah,
as a musician, I can't help but also appreciate that word.
okay. Sorry about that for the mess, but Substack won't let me shift return onto a new line. So
Of course they won't.
yeah, this is I will say here that I am raiding Ellen and her colleagues' intellectual property, but this is their work, right? But
Hmm.
it's fantastic. And you'll notice that every great piece of writing begins with the writer knowing what their concept is. What's the rough concept you're talking about with your piece, by the way, Daniel? Like with this piece and this project, what would you say is the concept if you had to sum it up in just a few words?
Mm. And I was gonna say an open source media publication is the concept, maybe.
Okay. I might challenge you there and say that sounds like um that sounds more like It is a concept. Everything's a concept though. But
Yeah, it's not quite there. Maybe could a concept be a question? Like I was gonna say, what if we could see behind the writer's curtain?
yes, now you're
Like
getting to it. Now,
transparency, right?
now you
Uh,
now you get yeah, exactly. So rather than it being like a physical thing in the
idea.
work,
Yeah.
I
It's
just
like what?
posted it in.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
good.
No, I've reposted it one by one in the chat so that anybody can see what Compose
Yeah.
stands for now. Um,
Mhm,
yeah, the general subject matter. So it's like it's not it's not the thing itself. It's like what you just said there. It's like is the concept, and this is for you to decide as the writer, and you can choose whatever you want, right? And you can change your
mhm,
mind as well. But you just said it. You just said something there which I think sounds very conceptual, like um, behind the curtain of the writing process or something,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
You've got to decide, is that the concept? Do you want to take it a bit further? Could it be the untold benefits of pulling back the curtain of the writing process? Could that be it? Or would you
Yeah.
call it something else? Would you push it in a different direction?
No, I think it is that. And this isn't a new concept, but the platform in which the concept is expressed is new. So
Mm-hmm.
David Perel's How I Write, right, is a similar concept. Like you're
Mm.
getting into the mind, into the process of the writer,
Yeah.
and that's why that podcast has exploded in popularity. There was such a need for it. I remember when you launched it, I was stunned because I said to myself, this is like one of the most meaningful things that any writer like David could have done because it's so important to really understand how someone writes, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
the secretive thing that it's like a black box, right? Trying to figure out how someone gets from an idea to an essay that travels the world and
Mm.
impacts thousands, millions of people potentially. I think about
Mm-hmm.
George Mack's high agency essay as well, and he uh, talked about power laws and said that high agency gets 200,000 visitors a month,
Mm.
and it's gotten more readers um, than all of his other essays combined over the
Mm.
past like 10 years. And so um, I I think that yeah, conceptually, how did he write high agency? Like how incredible would it be to have seen George's process for creating that essay that really kind of changed
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It'd be great. Um, right. So you've laid out a couple of potential ways of conceptualizing this piece, right? I would even, if we were working together, I would spend way more time than you are probably comfortable with at the C and the O stage,
Mm,
right? Um, because it's only by talking through things that you actually realize like why you're doing things and how things connect together. This was again one of the principles at Write a Passage was like um, writing from conversation. And for me,
yeah.
there's lots of ways of like phrasing and thinking about this idea. But for me, what resonated most about that is that like if you think about it, reading and writing are really hard skills to learn, and we've only
Mm,
been doing them like I don't know how many years, like 2, 3, 10,000 years or something maybe. Um, Conversation though, right? We have been doing that for bloody decade, like tens or hundreds of thousands of years.
mm,
Um, and you'll experience it yourself. You can develop ideas at lightning speed in conversation that would just take you forever if you were only had a pen in your hand. So we used to do
yeah.
this a lot at Right Message. Um, and if we were working together, I would be spending a while with you just on the concept and the objective because I'm not going to do it now because of obviously in the interest of time. But you've said, you've laid out what a couple of concepts might be for this piece that you feel satisfied with. But I'd challenge you on it. I'd be like, y- the concepts that you laid out, for example, they don't say anything about the qualities of open source collaboration that I think are so integral to this piece. Because
Mm,
you're not just talking about pulling back the curtain and revealing the writer's mysterious processes. You're also talking about this fantastic, fresh, odd idea of like, what if you juxtaposed open source collaboration and took some of the conventions from that and applied it to the writing process? So, do you see
yeah,
how it would? It needs a lot more work for us to get to a concept that you can say in 3 to 5 words. That's like, bang, that's it. That's the concept for this essay.
yeah,
Um, and only then would we move on to thinking objective. What do you want the reader to think, feel, or do? And you started off this live by saying that you had clear expectations for what that was. You want to encourage people to take this idea seriously and maybe participate. I would,
yeah,
again, if we were working together, I would push you even further. I'd be like, who specifically are you talking to? Because as we'll see as we get further into the writing process, if you want to motivate people to think, feel, or do something differently, then it's imperative, isn't it, that you know what they already think, feel, and believe. Otherwise,
mm,
how do you know what to challenge?
yes, yeah.
Um, so it's not. It's I don't think it's enough to have an anonymous group of
Ideal
uh,
customer profile, right? Like, yeah.
yeah, like
Mhm.
even if you've got a niche, like that girl. I love talking about that Substack that's just about dim sum, right?
Mm,
Uh, it's called Above the Fold. It's fantastic.
I
I
love it.
always use that. I always use that as an example of like the perfect niche. It's like the sweet spot, right? Like it's not like pasta or dough derived foods. That's too broad. And neither is it like soup dumplings from a particular city in China. That's too narrow. It's just let's write about any let's write about dim sum in all of its glory. And that's like just the perfect sweet spot niche. I would argue even somebody like that that's writing for that sophisticated level of niche still needs to sit down and think, but who is this specific essay actually for? Is it my sister? Is it that man I met down the street? Is it my son, my best friend, my ex-boss? Because if think about it just logically, if you can actually hold a real human being in mind when you're planning your writing, then you know so much more. You know their previous experiences, you know their education journey, their work history, you know what they believe, what their values are, what their language is, you know what anecdotes they're likely to use to tell stories about the way the world works. So once you know who that person is, then you're like, okay, now I have way more chance of coming up with material and stylistic flourishes designed to poke and prod and get under the skin of that particular belief or that particular way of seeing the world. Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah,
again, this is all very counterintuitive. And when you're just setting out to write, I was like this. You don't want to hear this shit. You're like, ah, I came to write to be free to get away from this top down control or this this government or this group that's bothering me or this old world that I used to live in that feels so constraining, and writing gives me so much freedom. And like I said at the beginning, it does. It gives you all of those things and more. That's what's so great about it. But I honestly believe, until someone can prove me otherwise, that when it comes to writing something that's really going to be compelling, you got to think about who are you writing to specifically, not a group, but ideally a real person.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, all of this is to say, dude, that like,
And I remember you mentioning that a little bit um in previous conversation, and I had to take a step back and really think about, okay, who am I looking for initially? Because
mm,
this isn't a beta or an alpha. This is what Anthropic would call a research preview. And when you're that early, you kind of need folks who are kind of just like crazy enough to try in a way. And so I have a couple like what I would call writer builders. That's the archetype
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm looking at, and have a lot of friends who are engineers and writers and who've been building software and understand the mechanics of open source software very well and have been writing for like years. And so really narrowing in on that
Mm, mm, mm.
person um, at the outset. Eventually, I want to serve more writers and more archetypes, but at this early
Mm.
stage, I think that's the focus.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. It's the paradox of it's the paradox. There's so many paradoxes in creative processes in business, right? Like,
Hmm.
do you achieve more by doing less with constraints?
Mm,
You 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 become more. You sell more products and services by trying to sell it to fewer people. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
this principle is one of those like what Paul Graham would call like a agnostic truth. Like it's true everywhere, right? Um, and
Mm,
it's the same with this. You could narrow down to writer builders. I would argue that's a, that's well defined. I mean, you're not writing to butchers, bakers, or candlestick makers, right? But it's still you could still go way further. Like imagine if you've got think of two friends you've got writer builder friends right now, right? Just off the top of your head.
yeah.
Imagine you were going to spend 15 minutes having a coffee with one of them, and then you were going to spend 15 minutes having a coffee somewhere else with the other one, right? And you only had 15 minutes, and I gave you the task of you've got to convince them to burn all of their belongings, just burn them on a big bonfire, right?
Mm,
15 minutes, go, right? You, having known this person, you would convince person A in a different way than person B, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this is it's the same with writing, and you could, this topic of the role of open source collaboration in writing process. I could ask you to write that piece, and I'll give you 10 different names, and you'll write 10 different essays. That's the
Yeah.
amazing weird thing about writing. So
Yeah.
I think
That's so true. Okay.
concept, nail the concept,
Mm,
uh, uh, an objective, spend more time than you expect there. That's what wasn't that something that like some really smart guy like Einstein said. They were like, um, given a really hard problem and 60 minutes to solve it, what would you do? And he was like, I'd spend 59 minutes making sure I was answering the right question or something like that, right?
mm,
The
yeah.
same thing, man. The the amount of work you do up front deciding on exactly what the concept is and then what you want to motivate people to think, feel, or do differently will just pay dividends for the rest of the writing process. It'll help you move to the next step, which is gather material, right? This is
Yeah.
super exciting. For me as a writer, this is one of the most exciting parts of projects. It's when you get to just go super wide and go fishing for things, right? So you're like, if you've decided that the concept for this piece is the role, the important, the surprising role that open source collaboration can play in understanding the creative process, you can then go out there and start, you know, trawling through your YouTube likes, all of your Readwise highlights. You can go back through your WhatsApp message history. You can look at all the books you've read. Maybe you use Obsidian, whatever it is, and give yourself a week, 2 weeks, however long it is, to just allow your brain to absorb and suck up material
Mm,
for this piece. Don't write a thing yet, right? Um, and collect everything. Collect stories from people, anecdotes, collect real hard data and graphs, collect weird definitions and proverbs that you might accompany it with, dialogues, stories, products, services, people. Just collect it all. Don't be discriminative about that. Yeah. Um,
yeah.
and then at a certain point, you'll just get this. You'll think, right, I've collected enough now. Enough's enough.
Mm,
And you'll already have started in the back of your mind to think about where you might place some of these examples and illustrations. And then only then you're getting into you're still not writing anything according to the composer manual,
yeah. Yeah.
right? Not You're not writing
Yeah.
anything yet. Um,
What's funny is I think part of the I'm gonna say mistake, but like part of the issue with the essay in its current form is I think I did too much of a dump of material. Like it's
yes,
good to your point to collect all these things and kind of immerse yourself in all these different ideas and kind of resources.
Mm.
and save them somewhere for you to reference. But that doesn't mean they all belong in the essay.
Yes,
And I think that
exactly.
was I was like kind of like I had this kitchen sink kind of like um you know challenge where I had so many things that I found and wanted to include in quotes and YouTube videos that I have pulled up here and stories from different people I admire
Mm,
and tying that
mhm,
into the why behind the essay itself. Um,
mm,
just like talking about the underdogs of the internet and how Quincy Jones discovered Oprah Winfrey
mhm, mhm.
back in the 80s um, and him talking with David Letterman about that story and but like maybe it doesn't belong, you know?
Well, you are your instinct for this is absolutely right. So
Mm,
what you're describing is it's like one of the most common things that us writers, it's the trap that all of us writers fall into all the time. It's like just cramming too many things into one piece.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and it's really obvious. And people say, experienced writers. I've seen experienced writers. They can read something and go, it's unfocused. There's too many ideas in this piece. Pick one,
mhm,
right? And it's easy for
mhm,
them to say it, and then the writer's like, "Oh my god, that's terrible. How am I going to do that?" Nobody ever goes further than that and says like, "Why you end up in this trap?" It's just for the reasons we talked about. It's when a piece is crammed full of ideas, it's the clearest indicator that they haven't followed a pattern like Compose. The writer hasn't decided up front exactly what the concept is, hasn't decided what they want their reader to do differently, and by doing that, they've identified often a real person to write it to, and then
mm,
haven't given themselves they haven't then given themselves the kind of like freedom to go and like gather material from the far reaches of the world. And then they haven't planned it. That's the P and the O. They haven't started a high level mock up or blueprint for presenting the material. They haven't thought about organization. What order should I say things in? What's the sequence? You can only answer those questions if you know that you're trying to convince Robert to try this product, or maybe if you're trying to convince Lucy to do it, then the plan might need to be a little bit different. Lucy responds better to emotions than to data. So maybe drop the data points and bring in
mm,
that story of when a writer, literally pulled their own hair out trying to write a piece of work. Or no, Robert actually works in local government. So the way to convince him is, "Oh, I wonder if there's a way to show examples of open source collaboration taking place within governmental agencies and the benefits of that." Do you see what I
mhm,
mean? Like it's so
mhm.
much easier to like make decisions about material and planning if you know who you're writing to and what you want them to do afterwards. And
Yes.
then you're ready to write. Then you're ready to write. And like I would say, I don't know, I don't want to prescribe anything in at this part, just that everyone writes differently. Some people like voice notes. Some people like Ernest Hemingway, or no, it wasn't Ernest Hemingway. It was it Kurt Vonnegut, or somebody wouldn't move on from a paragraph until they were 100% happy with it, and then they'd move on to the next. So almost
Wow.
first, second, fourth, fifth draft all in one go. Other people prefer to draft the whole thing, let it sit for a week, draft it again, let it sit for a week, go and have conversations with people. Whatever your poison, right?
Yeah.
It will be so much fucking easier, more fun, and smoother if you've done COMP and O first before you even write a word.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so my strategic feedback for you, dude, was a lot of it was, if I just gave you this feedback as I've written it here on my computer,
Mhm,
it might be useful, but it's a bit divorced of context. But now that we've spent a little
mhm.
bit of time talking about patterns and constraints and and sequencing creative process, this feedback makes a lot more sense now. So I started off by saying, Daniel's strengths in writing, he's a clear thinker and a clear writer. That comes through actually, right?
Yeah.
So um, imagine imagine how powerful your work could be if you went through and did the planning and the sort of decision making ahead of time, like, because you already are a clear thinker and clear writer and you're able to be very articulate. I can tell that you've got a big thing about craftsmanship, right? Like everything, there's no spelling mistakes. I can just tell, right, from craftsman to craftsman. I can tell another craftsman. I think you're also a generous writer and a humble writer in the sense that you're not like standing on the rooftops with a megaphone claiming to have all the answers, but you're actually just being like, hey, like, I've got this thing, it's an experiment, come with me on the journey. And readers love that.
Yeah.
Um, these are massive strengths. And I think you're also good at connecting ideas across disciplines and seeing the bigger picture. And man, that is like, if you've got that strength and you're a writer, wow, you're at a huge advantage. Um, the next bit of feedback I've got is, this is where I'm getting into my feedback now, is like, ultimately, right, if your goal with this piece was what you told me at the beginning, which was like to get the reader to think that the process of writing a piece is more valuable than the output, right?
Mm,
That's kind of what you want people to sort of believe, right? Then for me, like, I would ask you, what stands in the way of that? Like, what is it that convinces writers that the finished piece is more valuable than the process?
mm,
Right. Because that's the enemy in your story, isn't it? That's the
yeah.
thing going to stop people believing you, being convinced, stop people adopting the tool. But if you can identify what is it that stops, that makes writers think, oh, it's just I hate writing, but I love having written, right? Like,
Mm,
why? Like, why is that? What is it that's keeping people locked in that mentality? Because once you know that, you'll be able to attack it from different directions with ideas and content and material.
I love that. Okay.
Um, I'll give one more piece and then I'll pause and just check in with you because I know I'm looking at the time and I'm not sure if this has gone in the direction that you were hoping it would go. But
Oh, this is great, man. Yeah.
okay. Let me see. Some of this stuff we've already touched on. Um, yeah, I mean, this piece I wrote here, it feels like this is one of Daniel's magnum opus pieces in which, which makes a lot of sense because he's effectively launching this great idea with this essay. He's clearly got high hopes for it to succeed and he wants people to understand how it works and then participate. It's also got many moving parts. That's another challenge of yours as the writer, right? It does have a lot of moving parts. It's like there's no
Mm-hmm.
getting away from that. And there are many different supporting arguments for why a tool like this would be useful for people. But I think the magnum opus approach is letting the idea down. I think that Daniel should break it into 2 or 3 separate essays, make them shorter, tackle singular parts of it
Yeah.
from different directions. Um,
I love that. So I think this is over 2,000 words, and I feel like having 2 or 3 different essays attacking different problems, I think would make it much easier. Uh, it's funny when I had the kind of like kindling of the idea, I called it Mr. Hunter's Opus because I knew it was going to be incredibly big and very difficult. So that was like a joke to myself. Um, and yeah, I think splitting it up into different essays is a great idea.
Yeah, and it's oh look, it's really painful to to do that because as a writer, you can feel and picture all of this together, right? It's
Hmm.
complex, but your brain's capable of holding all that complexity and seeing the bigger picture and the vision, and it's exciting, and you're feeling all the emotions. Um, but I think like one of the things that I just took ages to realize about writing and publishing um, is that like, I don't know. It's you're allowed to update your thinking. You're allowed to change your mind. Readers kind of know that. Good, nice
Hmm.
readers. They'll give you that. They'll give you that grace. They're not expecting you to solve world hunger with one essay. They just and also, by the way, let's think about the user. Let's be empathetic and think about them. Everyone's busy. We're swamped in content. Nobody wants to read a magnum opus piece unless they are unless they like have to, right, for
Yeah.
studying or for a job, or unless they are absolutely obsessed with the topic and they've got 2 hours to spare. Nobody's got the mental capacity. I'm generalizing massively here, but people want to be taken on a breezy, nerdy, deep, specific journey that's alive with the writer's passion and enthusiasm. That's what they want, right? They don't necessarily want all the problems to be solved. And like, there's too much. I think personally, my opinion is that there's too much advice given online, and sort of,
Yeah.
assertions, declarations, and not enough curiosity and questioning. Not enough people saying, "I don't know actually," or "I want to change my mind. Actually, I've changed my mind." That seems like a good thing to seed into
Yeah.
your own life. Um, I so I'm rambling a bit here, but I do have a point to make, which is that can you as a writer accept the fact that this is a 50-year craft? Five
Yeah.
zero. Can you? And can you say to yourself, I'm willing to somehow find the patience, not to write all of these ideas in one go to all my subscribers and try and get indie thinkers off the ground next month, but have I got the patience to think about your friend Jonathan? I'm just mentioning him because I've met him,
Mhm.
right? What's a email you could send to Jonathan, right? Set yourself a timer, Pomodoro it, 25 mins. Send Jonathan an email and just try and convince him to use the app this weekend.
Mm.
And
Ah,
just see what
such a good constraint, Harrison.
see what comes out, man. And
Yeah.
I bet you anything your language is alive, fresh. I bet you're funnier. I bet you're dropping a few jokes.
Mhm.
Um, and you know what? Yeah, it's not directed at Jonathan, and you might feel as if you're sort of freezing out all those other people, but that's not how they'll experience it. They'll experience it as like fresh, alive, well directed, deliberate writing that's nothing like AI slop, and
Yep.
yeah, it'll be alive with humanity. That's
Mhm.
actually a sorry, that's actually a point I wanted to ask you about as well. It seemed like an underserved, no, not an underserved, a kind of like slightly neglected concept in this piece was this idea that um, you've said look like sloppification and AI are sort of dehumanizing the craft and community of writing. Okay, you said that if not in here, you said that in the message that you sent me about this project.
Yeah.
I that then means, doesn't it, that you believe there's something deeply human about the craft of writing and the community that can exist around it. Like, tell me more about that, man. Like what?
Mm.
How do you see that? Like, what's your story of
Mm.
what is human about writing? That from your perspective, like that itself could be an essay, or that could be the thing you write to Jonathan or me or whoever. But yeah, there's a lot in here, and I think it is about um, figuring out ways to sort of just constrain and limit yourself
Mhm.
so that you can mentally put down all of these disparate ideas and just focus on one at a time and give it the full attention that it deserves.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a relief, to be honest, Harrison, to think about this one rough draft potentially being three, four, five different essays. It's possible.
Mm.
And if I just kind of slow down and focus, I could really figure out the sequence um, of those essays. Because I think that would be the next thing to kind of wrestle with is like, okay, have the essays, have like three or four maybe um,
Mm.
that I could break out of this behemoth, and then what is the sequencing of that? Um, but it is very comforting and very relieving to me. It reduces the anxiety I have about trying to chop this tree down, right? It's like how do I wrangle this, right? And I think just thinking, well, hey, start with an email to a friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the beginning of the first essay.
Yeah, and like write it in
You know?
WhatsApp. Don't use your keyboard. Write it with your thumbs in
Yeah,
WhatsApp on the bus.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
um, I've noticed we're at time. I don't have a hard
yeah.
stop, but I don't know what your
Yeah,
plan
I think
is
we
for.
could kind of wrap up. I'm trying to stay disciplined with this experiment, and I think constraints again. I think are good. Yeah, I'll what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to hopefully grab a transcript from this, praying that Substack gods are kind to us, and uh, and use that as kind of context for the next draft. And I do think I'm going to try that email approach this weekend
Hmm.
and email a couple people and try and convince them to to submit an essay and to see what comes out of those emails, um, and use that as like the next draft. Because I
My
do
fight.
think that is like the first essay. I feel like to
Hmm.
lay out this broad vision is actually not necessary for these people that we're like I'm thinking about.
Hmm.
Um, I think I could condense the vision for like the writer builders that I have relationships with into like 3 sentences, and they would get it, and then I could just move on. So like I don't even need 300, 400 words, for them. And so if I only need a paragraph to lay out the vision for these people, then if I'm maybe trying to stick to 1,000 words, what do I spend the rest of the essay talking about? And yeah,
Honestly, can I very quickly just share something about
yeah,
I don't know, is it bad form to go over? I don't know. I've not done many Subsec lives.
it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a hard
Maybe we'll
stop?
try and cap it at like, no, I don't. I don't have a hard stop, but maybe we can go for like maybe another 5, 10 minutes.
Super quick example
Mm,
from my own life of the difference the difference between not using a pattern like Compose and using it. So for the longest time, I used to write by just opening my laptop. I'd have notes in places. I'd have like a sketchbook or two or something, but I just used to open my laptop and I'd try and write some stuff and I'd come back to it a few times and I might have conversations with people and then I'd give it another go. But, I felt resistant to rules and regulations and uh, edicts from above about how you're supposed to write. And I've tried to sort of rebel my way through
mm,
the craft, and I think it was partly stubbornness and me just being a natural sort of naturally rebellious spirit, but it was also a bit of um like me genuinely believing that we all human beings have this like incredibly mysterious and magical like flame inside us that if we can just find the right day, the right moment, the right desk, it'll just come out on the page and bang, like wow, look at that. And
mm,
and I think that I actually think that's a bit of a delusion, actually, that's getting in the way of people doing their best work. I think what really helped me was realizing how much the best creative practitioners become students of their own constraints, and realizing that whether it was musicians or artists or writers, that the best among them have constraints and take them very, very seriously indeed. And
yeah.
so when it, in with regards to actually trying to write my pieces, I haven't written a piece for ages. I don't know when my last one was, but if you go on my Substack, you'll probably see it was a few months ago now. And I tended to post monthly,
Mm,
thereabouts. Now, the reason I haven't posted in ages is because I'm working on essay and it's taking forever, right? It's taking forever because I'm using for the first time the compose pattern fully,
mm,
right?
mm,
And the difference. I can't stress
mm,
how viscerally different the experience is. I feel calm, I feel patient, and when I sit down to write the next bit, I know exactly which paragraph I'm working on. There are 16 paragraphs in my next piece, right?
mm,
And I'm on paragraph 8, I believe, next. So I'm only halfway through the thing. I've spent like 50 or 100 hours on this thing so far. And most of it was planning, material gathering, organization. Um, I'm on paragraph 8 of 16. I know exactly what the purpose of that paragraph is.
mm,
I know how many words I'm going to make it roughly, give or take 10 or so words. And I only know that because I know what paragraphs 1, 2, 3 through to 16 are all doing. I know what
mm,
sequence they're going in. And I only know that because I've gathered, I've determined up front who I'm writing it to, what the concept really is, you know? So I
Mm,
and now you might say, I can imagine a lot of writers out there that might see this and go, "Oh, that sounds like an awful way to write. That sounds like so rigid
mhm,
and regimented. And what about creative freedom?" Let me tell you, I have more I have more creative freedom knowing that paragraph A is doing this job and it has 150 words. You don't realize the amount of joy I get from having to think creatively about how to cram all the ideas I have into 150 words.
mm.
It's that's the
Yeah,
creative that's the
yeah,
creativity. Yeah, what's the opening sentence gonna be? The opening sentence is so important because it advertises up front what that paragraph's gonna be about, but you also it's also got to please the reader or surprise or unsettle.
mm,
And then, once I've nailed that first, I might spend half an hour writing different first sentences of paragraph 8 before I've chosen one. And
mm.
I'm saying all this. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying I'm only just discovering this way of writing after 5 years of writing pretty intensively, and it
Yeah,
is qualitatively and emotionally so different.
mm.
Um, I can focus on paragraph 8, and I can put down those other 15 paragraphs in my head. I don't need to worry about them.
That's
Right?
incredible.
Versus
Yeah.
the old way of, like, sitting in front of a blank screen and going, "Oh my god, I have a spaghetti of ideas in my head. Where the fuck do I even begin?" You know?
Mm,
So,
mhm,
I'm not prescribing anything to anybody, each to their own, but I would say, uh, my biggest if there's one thing I want people to take away from this conversation, it's like, it's don't discount constraints. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that to be constrained is to be less creative. It's the opposite. It really, really is, and
yeah.
I've learned it. It's taken years for me to get there, but I think if you um, just experiment with that idea, I think you'll be really, really pleasantly surprised. So focus on this essay. If you're going to continue to write it, think about what is the concept. You,
Mm.
you're going to write an email to Jonathan at the weekend, but what concept are you going to write to him about? Could you tell me now? I'm just challenging you. Sorry.
No, yeah, mm, I think I would go back to, mm, the process is the product,
Hmm. Okay.
and maybe frame it in a question like, what if your process was the product, and what if an essay was a product? Like, just kinda
Mm.
thinking through those ideas and focusing on, yeah, kind of just flipping the whole notion of, "Oh, I need to publish every week." Like, I think I tried and figure out, like, what is the connection between process of the product and power laws? Because you talked about working on this essay for 3 months. That doesn't matter if you publish it and it actually achieves the goals that you set out, right? Like to achieve.
Mm.
Um, Again, if you're publishing every month and let's say you grow your newsletter by 100 subscribers a month and you're publishing every month, that's 1,200 subscribers a year, right? If you publish every three
Yeah.
months and because of the quality, you're getting 1,000 new subscribers every 3 months,
Mm.
right? Like, uh, it's it's harder because we're impatient people, um, but it's more effective.
You
And
know,
so
you,
my main concept would be like, hey, like, what if less is more? What if the process was the product? What if you slow down and like maybe you're publishing every month, but what you're publishing are like the notes and like the exhaust of your process to publish the bigger thing.
mm,
Like,
mhm.
because here's Harrison, you could publish monthly about your process for publishing. It could be this is a meta analysis, like this, hey, this check in, this like reporting kind of like angle of like, hey, this is Harrison from like my laboratory. Here's where I'm at, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
could be this like riff. This could be this like very informal, like complete polar opposite of like your traditional compose process now. But it's still really effective, right? And you get to check in with your audience, and so that that that's probably where I would start with Jonathan.
It's great. Work if you Yeah, I mean, great, fantastic. Just like focus on refining the concept to the point where you convince that's what you want to say to him, and then
Hmm.
just nerd out on exactly what you want him to do, feel,
Hmm.
think differently after he's read it. And obviously, you'll only know how to do that if you know Jonathan well. You know what sort of things he tends to believe, or what things make
Hmm.
him laugh, or whatever. Final thing, for me to sum up, like me and my wife went to art school in London. We did a BA and an MA, and so we experienced, we experienced what a contemporary art institution is like in the in the modern age, and we loved it. It was incredible. I don't regret a single second of any of it. However, on reflection, years later, we both agreed, and we did different disciplines, different classes. I went to a different school for my MA, but we
Hmm.
both agreed on something. On reflection, like if we could change something about art education, this is what we would change. The we would get the curriculum and the tutors and the focus to be much more about the process, not the output, right? Like,
Hmm.
what we mean is instead of everything being about like learning a skill and producing a piece of work and then like standing up and defending it or presenting it or writing a thesis or it was all about that. And actually the reality of being a creative person in the world today is like it's the daily process of maintaining a craft and sustaining a creative output. That's what we have to put up with day in, day out. The finished piece is like one thing that some people read for 30 seconds and then they never see it again. But the process that you went through, to me and my wife, felt so interesting and precious that we ought to have had lectures on it. We ought to have had lectures that were called like where you work. And we could have had whole lectures on the pros and cons of being in a dark room versus a boisterous cafe. What are the differences there, right? What does that
Hmm.
produce for different people? There was just so much in there. I won't go into it now, but I'm bringing it up because what you're basically calling for in this essay is exactly that. S- you're saying if you genuinely care about the craft of writing, don't fall into the trap of getting obsessed with output, subscriber numbers,
Yeah. Hmm.
shiny finished things. There's a whole world of juicy, fascinating, mysterious, fulfilling, process related things that we writers need to be championing and talking about more. Um,
Hmm.
and dude, I would say, to anyone that looks at a pattern, I'm not prescribing this one, but to anyone that looks at a writing pattern like Compose or any other methodology out there and criticizes it for being rigid or, um, you know, like just for misunderstanding the creative process or whatever, right?
Hmm.
I would argue that uh, an engagement with a pattern like Compose is process orientation. It's it's like me, like I'm not sitting up at night thinking, "Oh, I need to publish a piece and get more likes."
Yeah.
I'm
Hmm.
sitting in bed at night going, "I cannot wait to open my sketchbook on Saturday and go to paragraph 8 and then spend an hour nerding out about what that first sentence is gonna be." You know?
Hmm. Hmm.
That
Hmm.
that is a process orientation. So patterns like Compose, they are helping us
Yeah.
be obsessed with the process, not the outcome. I would argue
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I love that. And
Right.
talking more
Yeah,
about that, I think would be fun with some friends. So yeah, I think that's our start, man.
dude, I
And
enjoyed it,
this
man.
was
Time
yeah,
went
this
so
is
fast.
just yeah, right. It's just man, it's insane. It's like hour and 15. Like really? But no, this is incredibly helpful, Harrison. I'm going to, like I said, try and get this transcript, include that in the pull request, and yeah, I'm gonna continue iterating, and I'll let you know when I've got something.
Yeah, but dude, keep me posted. I really hope
Yeah.
it works. I do.
Mm.
I do think you're onto something extremely useful, interesting, unusual as well.
Yeah.
And I think it won't appeal to everybody, but you don't want that. You want to
No.
find the people out there that are willing to sit through an hour and 15 minutes of two blokes talking about the mechanics of a single sentence. Like that's who you want. That's who you want.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, dude. Well. Thank you for your time. I don't take it for granted. You've always been a huge help, Harrison. I cherish these conversations so much. So enjoy the
Well, man,
weekend, and we'll be in touch.
it's Friday now, and I'm gonna just
Yeah.
log off and go and chill. All right, dude.
Yeah.
Keep in touch.
All right. Yep.
Bye,
We'll do.
everybody.
Cheers, man. See ya.